Three. All right, here we go.
Hey,
Ready for
Steve,
this?
can I just start by saying I'm super
Yeah.
proud of you that you counted to three before you hit record? Like
Hey,
that is, I
I've been
I just want
practicing. I've been practicing with my son. He's 3, and we've been practicing counting, singing the ABCs.
it's
He normally
good.
goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 21, 18, 13, 15, and then it gets all messed up.
Hey, that's good. And I think talk about our kids is a perfect way to start.
It is a perfect way to start. Cheryl, hello, welcome. How
Hey
are you?
there, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited about this conversation. It's a little bit probably different of a conversation that we've normally been having on our podcast episodes, but David and I think it's a really, really important one. And I heard Cheryl talk on another podcast from the Exodus Road, which is the nonprofit organization that we're supporting and really proud of. And I heard Cheryl talk, and I was just like, oh man, we got to get Cheryl on the show to talk about this because it's such an important topic, and we're gonna dive into it.
Absolutely.
But first, what I want to do, just for our audience and listeners, just to kind of understand who we're talking to today, because she's pretty important, pretty big deal, at least here in Colorado for sure. So Cheryl Kosmerl is a licensed clinician therapist practicing in Denver, Colorado. She has 20 years professional experience in the social work field with an extensive specialized history working with children, adolescents, young adults, and their families who have experienced abuse, neglect, and trauma. This work occurred across a variety of settings from community-based to residential treatment and secure juvenile facilities. As a private practice therapist for 12 years, her services have come to include individual therapy, family therapy, facilitating groups, and public speaking. For the last 15 years, Cheryl worked primarily with children and adolescents who committed sexual offenses. And then 7 years ago, she worked collaboratively with the first Judicial District Attorney's Office in Colorado, developing the curriculum called Sexting Solutions. And this program is a therapeutic alternative to legal consequences for juvenile sexting behaviors. The program was the first of its kind in the state of Colorado, and since the inception of Sexting Solutions program, of the 300 plus adolescents who have participated, less than 2% have come to the attention of the DA's office in recommitting the offense. So that's a lot.
Yes,
and
it is.
it sounds really serious, which it is. And it scares the bejesus out of me because I have a young daughter, and I know David has a young daughter. And yeah, um, I don't really even know where to begin. But I guess, Cheryl, for you, like, could you just kind of give us a little bit more background of where all this started for you?
So, I am a therapist, and thank you for having me because I think this is such a great topic that
Yeah.
anyone I can speak to spread the message. It's really important. So, I am a therapist, and I specialize specifically in kids who've committed like hands-on sex offenses. And about 7, 8 years ago, the district attorney's office in Jefferson Gilpin County contacted me and said, the way the sexting law stood at that point in Colorado, if you were under the age of 18 and you either took a naked picture of yourself and you sent it to someone, or someone had sent you a naked picture and you had saved it on your phone, you had committed a class 3 felony.
Wow.
So felonies are more serious than misdemeanors,
Yeah.
and to kind of give you perspective, class 2 felony is manslaughter.
Wow.
So the way the law was written, that offense, which wasn't even that like a hands-on sex offense, which were the other cases that I really were dealing with, was considered a class 3 felony. You could have been on the sex offender registry. You could have been removed from the home.
Wow.
Negatively impacting your whole life and your adulthood as well.
And if you don't mind me interrupting, what, I guess, why is that, and how is that ubiquitous? Is that like most states are at that level of strictness? It just seems very disproportional.
Yes. Well, the problem is prior to 2007 or 8, we weren't all walking around with computers in our pockets.
Yeah.
We were walking around with cell phones. But now, once they turned into smartphones, they became a computer. And once they became a computer, you had access to the World Wide Web that you never had before. So that law was actually over 20 years old, and it was outdated. And it hadn't, it just hadn't been updated to the where we were for the times. And kids started sexting. I mean, I don't know your age, but like when I was a kid, if I wanted to sext, it would take a week. Like I would have to take the picture,
Like mail a letter,
ride my bike to the grocery store or the little like hut that was where you dropped your film off, wait 3 or so days, ride my bike back, pick it up, and then hand someone the picture. But nowadays, I mean, with the access that we have to technology, it blew up. It was a huge problem. And the district attorney in Jefferson Gilpin County said, you know, this law is outdated. It took a lot to get the law changed. And since the law is outdated, let's have a alternative to legal consequences. And the second part of your question was, is it like this in some other state? The law has now been changed in Colorado. It was changed in 2018.
Okay.
It was supposed to be updated. COVID hit. So I don't really know where that is with being updated, or they were definitely going to relook at it within 2 years. But in other states, in other parts of the country, it is still considered child pornography to sext under the age of 18. So I don't have all the states memorized, but neither do most parents. And that's what, unfortunately, they don't figure out that this is going on until there's maybe a knock on their door or school resource officer calls them to come pick up their kid because something's pretty serious has happened.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because I think as a parent, you know, understanding these things and just, you know, sexting is so there's a prevalence of now, especially way more than when we were kids, that we don't even understand it. And I think it's important as parents to be very proactive and understand our local laws and how that can impact the entire life of a child potentially.
Absolutely. And it needs to be a dialogue. In my opinion, it needs to be a dialogue when they're exposed to devices in the first place, which realistically, that's as toddlers. So they see us I have a toddler. Yeah. He sees me on my device. He wants to be on it. He knows Netflix is on it. So he's trying to grab it. So I think that like when kids are young and you're teaching them good touch, bad touch, secret touch, you also have to teach them that you don't ever take a naked picture of yourself. And that also falls onto the parents, what you're modeling about taking naked pictures of your kids. It might be really cute to see them doing something cute naked, but you're teaching them that that it's okay to photograph naked. And I think it starts even that far back.
That's a really
modeling
good point.
That behavior.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think when did you get your first cell phone? I think I didn't get mine until college.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely college.
Yeah,
right. And it was like the latter parts of college. It wasn't, we were like juniors or seniors.
Yeah, and it was like the flip phones. It was like the remember those? But and now, just like you said, Cheryl, like my 3-year-old knows how to completely work an iPad and knows how to get on Netflix and YouTube and like everything. And so it scares me a lot. Something that you talked about in the podcast episode that I listened to before was just all the different apps and how there's so many apps that have some type of social engagement, where like some of them you wouldn't even think do have social engagement, and there's so many that also like don't monitor at all and are they are overseas. And so if you could just kind of briefly talk about that, and how as parents we can kind of at least try to monitor that.
So it's really important to understand the apps that your kids are having access to. And some of them are monitored, but you also have to understand the amount of, okay, so YouTube specifically. I wrote a blog on YouTube and researched it quite extensively, which, by the way, if you want to know about apps, Common Sense Media is my favorite resource for that, because Common Sense Media breaks down apps, even YouTube channels, but like apps, videos, movies, things like that. They have parent ratings, they have kid ratings.
Okay.
And I really like it because it's I love the fact that it's parents and kids' opinions on what the ratings should be.
Nice.
But and the thing that Common Sense Media added last summer was specifically rating more of the YouTube channels, the really popular YouTube channels, because I don't think parents really research that.
Yeah.
So, but my research of YouTube, like the best monitoring of apps are you, because like 400 hours of content is uploaded to YouTube every minute.
Wow.
So it's not possible for YouTube to hire enough people to watch the content. So like even YouTube Kids, parents I think have like this false sense of security of, oh, it's YouTube Kids, it's monitored. It can only be monitored so well. So it's not necessarily what you think it is, and it's not. They might, stuff slips by, and so you really kind of have to research the apps that they're watching, check in with the apps that see what are going on. I think it's important for older kids to recognize what apps have chat features. I've learned everything from my clients. I just recently found out Spotify had a chat feature. I didn't know that. So it's just like all these, and I've had parents, I've had a parent who's a parent, like even parents who think they're super savvy and on top of things. I had a parent who thought she was super savvy and on top of things, and her daughter wanted to download an app that was memes. I think it was like funny.com. And she just thought it was funny memes, but there was a chat feature. And so her daughter was actually talking to an older person on the app without her knowing. And he invited her privately into a private room. And I mean, the mother was like, I was the parent that was on top of things. And this still happened. So
it's crazy.
Your parents are the best monitor of what's really going on. Like, not necessarily these apps are going to monitor them as well as you think they can. So
yeah, there's a lot there that, and I think you really hit it. I think it's the proactive approach to to parenting, right? And a lot of us, I know I'm guilty of putting my kids on devices to just get a breather for a sec. And it's, one of the things in the morning, we give them a small amount of time to pick a show, and they go on YouTube. And I'll tell you, it's crazy because I'm sitting there and I watch over their shoulder quite a bit, and I'm like, hey, turn that on. What are you guys even watching? Because they're kids, they pick the dumbest stuff anyways. You're like, why are you watching this dude play video games? Like, that's not what we do. And so then we had to make a rule of, you're not allowed to watch people play with toys. There's a lot of really weird stuff. Like, I mean, I think it's weird. But the kids are for some reason drawn to it because it's toys or whatever. My kids are young, a 4-year-old, 7-year-old, and now 10-year-old. But it's just it's constant. Like, it's a constant bombardment that I think you make a great point. And I wrote down Common Sense Media because I'm gonna jump on there and be checking everything out. And I'm gonna be the dad that's gonna be spying on my kids and getting in their Facebooks and doing all that kind of stuff. So they can't listen to the podcast to get my secrets. But I'm curious, how did you, like, what got you interested in this? Like, what was the catalyst that drove you to spend so much of your professional life focused on this topic? I mean, obviously it's shifted over the last 10 years, but
yes. So Jefferson County DA's office said, we want to provide a legal alternative for sexting. We don't want kids to be on the sex offender registry like my other clients are. It's not a hands-on sex offense. To me, sexting it's a bad choice. And it doesn't need to negatively impact their life how a hands-on sex offense can. So they said, will you create a curriculum? And I did. And this curriculum I put together, and I've been running this program for 7 years. And I work with, so originally, so the curriculum has just evolved into what it is based on the trends that I see with kids. So I have had over 300 kids go through my sexting course. I have had kids as young as 10, because in the state of Colorado, you can be arrested at 10. Most parents don't know that until their kids get in trouble. I'm that weird person that tells kids on their 10th birthday, just so you know, you can now be arrested and you need to know that.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
David's daughter just turned 10. So
I'm going to go tell her. I'm going to go tell her tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is it's just the curriculum, the work that I've done is evolved into, like, I'm in the process of writing an ebook. I'm rolling out my website, sextingsolutions.com. Like, I've just gathered all of this information from running these groups. I love running these groups. It's different than the kids that I work with who've committed a hands-on sex offense. It's really dialogues and conversations that kids aren't receiving in public school. So in my curriculum, we talk about healthy relationships. We talk about consent and the consent laws. I think that's really important. I think that some schools will talk about, like in Jefferson County, it's called Growing and Changing. So it's like that sex ed course, but I think it's also important to know the law. We talk about your value system, how you treat people. We talk about empathy. And it's just really, I mean, the curriculum has evolved into what it is today from the trends that I hear from the kids and what they experience. I think, like, since the beginning of time, kids have always said, my parents don't get it.
Yeah.
And parents remind them, well, I was a kid once too. But I'm going to be honest, parents don't get it with this generation, because this is the first generation, like smartphones. I mean, like I said, became popular in 2007, 2008. And this is the first generation where we're seeing, I kind of feel like I say to the kids I work with, I'm like, you're a giant science experiment for technology, because it wasn't like this growing up when we were kids. Like, if I wanted access to pornography, it was a magazine that my friend stole from their father that they found. Like, it wasn't, and nowadays, the sheer access of pornography on the internet is, I mean, it's shocking how, and I could go down that rabbit hole. Like, there's just, and this is all that I've learned from running this class for 7 years.
Well, so is this class that you're offering only for children that have committed sex offenses, or, I mean, is it open?
So
to
these kids have
anybody?
sexted, so I wouldn't consider that a sex offense. But so what it was originally is, Jeff, like, if you got in trouble for sexting, they would ticket you and say, go take Cheryl's class.
Okay.
Now my name has gotten out there a lot. So I have had parents call, like, school resource officers and be like, we're really concerned. Can we get, like, is there any resources? And so I've had parents voluntarily put the kids in my class. I've worked with kids individually. So I'm a therapist and I work with kids individually on the curriculum. I'm going to roll out a webinar for parents. Nice. It's going to be on my website. This is all kind of happening step by step.
That's awesome.
But because more than just kids in this part of Colorado need these resources, and more than parents. Like, my curriculum is going to be for sale for professionals to use as well. So there's just such a need for this right now. And I have all this great knowledge because I'm working with these kids every day, and they love, it's interesting because the classes are great because it's conversations that you're not having in school.
Yeah.
So
have you watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
I loved it. I was terrified by it.
Yeah.
But I feel like the next thing is, I think the piece that's missing the mark with the social dilemma is kids are gonna, so Facebook isn't popular anymore.
Right.
It's for old people. I don't know if you're aware.
I guess.
It's not
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Snapchat's cool. Facebook is not.
Right.
So I feel like my recommendation would be like, take that and make it more applicable to the kids that, because they're like, oh, I don't use Facebook. So I think that's the only piece that's missing from that. Like, I loved the movie. I thought it was terrifying and important message, but I feel like we're a little bit missing the mark because kids are going to look at that and they say, well, that's not me. I'm not on Facebook.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and you can't even keep up. In my current position, so I'm in the Navy, I'm a commanding officer, and I have a lot of legal issues and things that I engage with. And I have a current case that the websites and the things that these sailors are doing, I'm like, I am so unplugged and far, like things I've never heard of, and the things they're doing on these websites. Obviously, if it's coming to me and it's a legal issue, I'm blown away. And I don't even know, I have no idea of the things I don't even know that I don't know. And what scares me about it is a lot of these sailors are very young. We get them when they're 18 years old a lot of times, and they come and they're just coming, they're kids, right? A lot of them they're coming out of high school, and 2 weeks ago they're living in their parents' house and they're their mom and dad's baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're exposed to so much, and I'm just like all the things I can't even imagine what my kids are exposed to. And that's what scares me, is as diligent as I want to be, and now with all the virtual schooling and everything that's going on, like there's just so many trons hitting these kids and influences that you can't even keep up. And so how, as a parent, do you get ahead of it? And I'm kind of curious. So you talked about the potential of selling, these courses to the professionals, and a lot of the kids that you're seeing and talking to. Where do parents go? Like, how do you stay up with this stuff as a parent? How do you get training to be a better parent in this, specifically in this arena?
I think that it's important to like I said, understand the apps, understand the devices, understand the extent of internet access your kids have. I think that's get the devices out of the bedroom. That's another thing. But understanding like we have so many parents, like I deal with so many kids on another part of my work. I do type of trauma therapy, but another part of my work is I work with kids who are absolutely addicted to pornography. So it's really important as an adult to understand how many devices in your house have internet access. The people who throw because they get to the new iPhone, there's a new iPhone out, so I'm just going to throw it in the drawer. Well, you've now taken a computer and thrown it unsupervised in the drawer, and kids take them and they sneak them in their rooms and they're watching things that they're not supposed to be. So it's important to understand that piece of all the devices that actually have internet access, because I feel like parents will like purchase a device and not understand what their kid can access on it. I think it's also really important to be having conversations about what are the rules around the devices. How do we carry ourselves on these devices? Digital citizenship is a really important conversation, ongoing conversation that needs to be happening of how you're treating people. But it's also about modeling. That's a lot of my stuff goes back to the parents, is like, you got to model this stuff as well. But so having ongoing conversations about digital citizenship, having ongoing conversations about empathy and how you treat people, and how, like, I think another piece that we're really like, so I'm rolling out this new website. I'm doing tons of research. I'm like really diving deeper into this world. And when I look at more often than not, if I Google anything about sexting, it says It's all about being on the defense, about say no, the repercussions of sending pictures, how it can negatively impact you. And I'm like, you're talking about step 2. Step 1 is treat people better and don't ask for naked pictures and don't ask for naked videos and don't send them. So it's like, I think is another big piece, which to be honest, it's more of the girls getting the pressure to send them than the boys. Do boys sometimes get pressure? Yes. Not nearly as bad as the girls. And it's like having that conversation. There's a huge piece with empathy and how you treat people and don't pressure people. What is pressure? Teaching kids what pressure is. So I think it's important. There's a lot of dialogues and open communication that has to happen, because honestly, all the monitoring devices you possibly want to put on your devices, the having open lines of communication and dialogue is more effective. Hand in hand, they're both great.
That's awesome. That's great advice. I'm sitting here like taking notes down. I thought the things that I didn't even think about and that I'm going to change tomorrow is, hey, when we do give them screen time, you're not taking them in your room. It's always going to be out in the open. Like just stuff like that. Little things I think are really important. And that open lines of communication thing, that's obviously huge because you want to establish, I mean, as a dad, I want to establish that with my kids when they're young so that when they're older, they come to daddy, right? Like I would love for my kids to trust and come to me with the difficult decisions, difficult conversations, and before this becomes an issue. And I think that, that step 1 that you highlight is huge. Have those conversations, establish those boundaries, but also teach your kids how to, because I have boys, 2 of my kids are boys and one is a girl. And I want my boys to treat women with dignity and respect always. Like I would be absolutely mortified if my boys were on the other end of that saying, hey, send me some pictures, or being that, being those boys and growing into those types of men would be heartbreaking. And I think that, establishing this stuff very young is really key, because that's super powerful. And I appreciate you highlighting that, because I think sometimes we need to be told like, hey, just go talk to your kid. Just go have a conversation. Might be hard, but it builds that trust. And I'm assuming that what you see with the best recovery and even the best avoidance are of future sexting incidences or worse is engaged parenting. Is that the most effective thing?
I think like the lines of communication. Like I tell the kids in my group on the first night, I say, how many of you thought your parents would kill you when this happened? And the majority raise their hand. And I say, I just want you to know I have 100% success rate that none of the parents have killed any of the kids in my class. I'm like, so you can go to them. What worries me is like when the parents get, the lines of communication, and I stress that in my class, the lines of communication have to stay open. And if you take every single device away from them, pull them out of public school, take away their bedroom door, ground them from everything, and just shut them down, they're receiving the message that if I get caught doing something, you're not going to help me, you're going to shut me down. And what breaks my heart is I say to the kids when because in my group, by the way, the adults are not there during the group. They're there the first week and the last week. They're not in the other 4 weeks because the kids don't talk if the adults are there.
Yeah.
So I turn to the kids and I say, like on, I think it's like week 4 or 5, like who is your adult that you can go to if something's really bad? Because sometimes things are too complex to handle for your friends, or for like, is there someone in the home you'll go to? Is there like a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, a counselor, a coach, someone that you would go to if things got really bad? And when kids look at me and say, I wouldn't go to anyone because I can't trust, they're just going to shut me down and take everything away, that breaks my heart, because the lines of communication have to stay open. You want your kids being able to come to you and say, okay, we're going to talk about this and we're going to figure it out. One of my first blogs that's going to be on my new website is how to handle when it happens, because it's like, you might say things you regret, then what can you do to fix it? Like, keep the lines of communication open. Because you're both fathers, I'm going to tell you this. One of the most frustrating things that I see is the fathers who judge their daughters for these behaviors. And the girls say to me, my dad won't even look at me anymore. Like, the thing is like rejecting, like, I think that something else that you also have to understand that sexting is unfortunately a red flag for, or it's a flag for like the beginning of sexual development that it never was before. So when these girls get rejected for, or maybe even like slut shamed by their fathers, or like, he won't talk to me, he's like, when like, you gotta find a way to keep that relationship open. And I see that so often where these girls are just heartbroken because they're like, and that's the last thing you want to do, is to be the male influence of their life and not be a voice anymore. So it's hard, it's uncomfortable. You probably you have some really negative feelings about the person that did this, but make sure that you keep the lines of communication open with your daughters, because you're that positive influence. So yeah, it's hard conversations sometimes. And sometimes you might mess up, and sometimes you might say the wrong thing. And maybe you come back a day later or 2 days later and go, I didn't handle that well. Can we do this again? Can I try that again? So that's some advice there.
So you're saying put the doors back on my kids' rooms? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I just think when you shut everything down, it's just, they find other ways. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like I said,
You're not going to stop
everyone has that drawer of 4 different cell phones and their friends will give them a cell phone. There was even, there was a news article that I saw where this girl got grounded, and she posted on her, I don't remember what social media thing she posted on, but she posted via the smart refrigerator, they took my device.
Wow.
And it's like, they will find a way. And every time they walk out your door, they have, no matter what you clamp down in your house, when they walk out your door, they have access. So the lines of communication are the most important pieces.
So that kind of reminds me and opens up another conversation that's, I guess, goes a step further than that, about really just the link between online social engagement and talking to friends, to that next even worse step of actual like trafficking. And David and I, like I said earlier, are supporting Exodus Road, and the conversations you had earlier about that. And if you can just kind of talk about like that progression and like how it gets there. And you talked about a story on the other one that blew my mind. It scares me to death. But if you could kind of just talk about that link.
So one of the things you can't say to your kids is don't talk. Here's the other thing with missing the mark. You know how I said about that movie, Miss the Mark?
Yeah.
The stranger danger message that we all learned as kids, misses the mark. Because if you say don't talk to strangers on the internet, they will say, I don't. I know this person. I have communicated with them for exactly 32 seconds, and now I know them.
Yeah, they're my best friend.
Adults are no better. Adults are no better.
Right.
Absolutely. So in their mind, it's, oh, you're not talking. I can talk to this person. They're not a stranger. So there is a link between sexting and sex trafficking. What happens is sex traffickers comb social media, and you can tell who's vulnerable. You could tell the person who puts their information on there about, I'm fighting with my parents, or this is going on in my life, or this or that. And the other problem is kids will say, here, talk to my cousin or my friend or a friend of a friend, or you can so people meet people on social media. And once they meet them, they decide that they're a friend and they're no longer a stranger. The thing that happens is often a person we call it grooming. So grooming behavior is when you're warming up to someone and trying to get them to let their guard down. So if someone's being groomed on social media, the person will often, like that story I said about that girl, she was on a public social media page, and then the guy invited her to a private room to chat with her. So they typically will kind of very manipulative, very play on their emotions. You're beautiful, you're gorgeous. I'll take care of you. I want to date you. I love you. And then they give the person, so that the grooming behaviors is to get them to let their guard down. And then they tell them everything they want to hear. And then they say, oh, send me a naked picture. And when the person gives in, and a lot of times they give in from pressure, because these girls especially, which boys get pressured as well, but they just get pressured so often. And so often I hear, I just did it to make them stop. I thought if I send one, they'd just leave me alone, which it doesn't. It's reinforcing that behavior. Yeah. So what happens is once a person receives the naked picture, the power has switched, because then they have something to use against them. And they say, you need to do what I say. And if you don't do what I say, I'll spread your picture around school. If you don't do what I say, I'll send it to your parents. If you don't do what I say, I will, put it on social media. So things like that. And then that can lead eventually to the person being able to manipulate them to do things like meet them. And I've seen in cases where it's, escalated as serious as sex trafficking, where I had a client, and they have given me permission to tell this story, where she was speaking to a friend of a friend, which the friend said it was their cousin. And the person was telling her everything she wanted to hear. And it was her boyfriend in her mind. And he groomed her to send naked pictures, and she did. And he said, I will kill you if you don't do what I say. No, actually, I'll kill your family if you don't do what I say. So he was able to get her to do some pretty illegal, serious stuff to other people on his behalf.
Wow. That just makes me sick.
It's crazy. And I think as serious as the topic is, and why we wanted to talk about this today is, obviously the obvious links between human trafficking and something we're very passionate about. And those are very uncomfortable conversations as well. But this stuff is really, there's a lot of angles here of prevention and awareness, and the conversation is support. And just, if anything, if this conversation and our listeners hear this and it inspires them to open those lines of communication with their, friends, family, kids, whomever it may be, just to spread awareness, I think it's so important. It really highlights how important your work is. And yes, is it serious? And yes, is it, can it be very scary? All those things. But I think there's also an element of hope, right? I mean, you wouldn't do this if your every single day was met with just the pure intensity and negativity of your work. Can you kind of shine some of the light on the positive aspects of it, and some of the grace and the light that I know is coming from what you do, the lives that are saved by your efforts and the things that you're putting out? I'd love to focus on that for a few minutes.
So the reason I love this work, because it can be pretty dismal, but the reason I love this work is I'm having conversations with teenagers that they are teens and tweens that they're dying to have. They want to have a conversation about, they want to learn this information. They want to learn about what a healthy relationship looks like. They need someone to talk to them about how to ask someone out for the first time, like what different ways to, like, what it looks like to spend time with someone and get to know someone, and what's healthy and what's unhealthy and what's abusive. Like, kids they want to learn this information. Like, they are looking for, like, I had a client, and it's funny because I talked to him today, and I was like, I still tell your story. Like, I had a client tell me, he's like, you ruined me. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because this girl dumped me because I wanted to talk about my feelings too much. And I was like, that's the best thing I ever heard. And he's like, yeah, but I got dumped but now he's older and he was able to reflect on it. And he's like, that's what I need, Cheryl. I need someone that wants to talk about their feelings. So I'm teaching kids about empathy. I'm teaching kids about the negative impacts of porn and how we're like, when I'm talking about like social media and I'm like, take a digital break. Just take a this is another thing I ask kids. So a lot of the times when you get in trouble for sexting, your devices get taken away by law enforcement, and they're kept as evidence until they complete my course. So that's a good period of time. And at first they're like losing it that they lost their device. And more often than not, they're like, I'm actually glad I lost my device. Because awesome. The pressure of having it, the pressure of being on social media and always having to be on and always having to look at it. Like, I think even as adults, like when you go on vacation, you're like, I'm going to put it away. And it might be kind of hard the first couple of days, but then you're like, oh, this is great. Like, so I think the reason I love what I do is because I teach these kids all sorts of information that they're having conversations that they're not having anywhere else. And it's really interesting and exciting for me to kind of, my practice is called Seeds of Change. So I'm planting seeds for healthier tomorrow. And these kids need to learn this stuff, like have watch. I think it's so great. Here's another resource. Sit down with your kids and watch a movie together and discuss it. Boys hate this assignment, but I make them watch romantic comedies. They get so mad at me. Give me that for a homework assignment. I'm like, oh, I just did. And like have conversations about, was that consent? And was that nice? And was that not nice? And like watch what these kids are watching, like walk into their world and see what they're doing and use it as a conversation piece. Like it can really help you see how they look at things and what they're surrounded by, the messages they're surrounded by, and it opens up communication. So
do you ever recommend Fools Rush In? Because I love that movie.
I feel like, is that a like kind of like 10
Salma
years
Hayek?
It's older.
It's probably more than 10. Matthew Perry and Salma Hayek.
I do
love that movie. For any of our listeners out there that haven't seen Fools Rush In, go watch it.
Do you cry in it?
With tears of joy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hope we're encouraging our boys to cry.
That's
that
right.
Could be another topic someday if you want to have me back. But
I struggle with that. That's one thing that I've really tried to stop crying out of my lexicon, because it's like my natural instinct is definitely to be like, stop crying, cut it out. And because a lot of times they're crying over sissy stuff, like not like emotional stuff that's important. They're crying over like,
she's rolling her eyes right now.
I bumped my thumb, and now I'm just kidding. I'm totally joking.
She's rolling her eyes at you.
Wow. No, I was trying to.
But that's so yes,
Cheryl, what we love about our podcast is really we just use these as mentoring sessions for ourselves, and
we really do.
Mm-hmm.
David needs
good
right now.
Yes, it's very important to teach your boys to be vulnerable.
It's good.
Yeah, no, the good thing is my boys cry all the time, so I think they're right on the path of like being very vulnerable, and so I just have to nurture that.
Do they get to see you vulnerable? That's the other important piece.
I never attempt to hide it.
Good.
And I'm an emotional guy, but one thing my daughter did say that kind of hit me, because I don't try to, but she's like, I've never seen you cry, Daddy. And I'm like, I cried when you were born. You don't remember? But that's something that is important. It is important to highlight those, and especially as like military dudes, and we're surrounded by mostly alpha males all the time, and it's always on. And I think it's such a, it's even a huge part of Brene Brown. I don't know if you know her, but I love her. Worker. Oh, she's so good. Yeah, you know her. But I love like her leadership lessons, and hopefully she'll come on our podcast one day if you know her, maybe put in a good word for us. But
I wish I knew
her.
But
the power of that vulnerability is I want my kids to have that kind of powerful leadership. And so yeah, it's important, but my daughter definitely has made those comments before. So
Mhm.
I'm working on it. I'm gonna try and cry right now, see if it gets awkward.
Okay. This will be the end of your therapy session. We can move back to sexting. But
One thing that I have found myself doing, and my kids have called me out on it, and I'm still not great at it, is you know, I'll be at work most of the day. I'll come home and I'll still be on my device. I'll be like looking at social media, and I have blocked out a time on my schedule to try to be fairly intentional about putting everything away and focusing on family and having, family time, kid time. And I'll catch myself like on my phone, like looking at social media or whatever, looking at emails or something for our business. And like my kids, they'll just call me out. Like my 3-year-old son, he'll be like, "Daddy, look at me, Daddy. Take your phone away. Put your phone away, Daddy." And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. And it like wakes me up. I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? I'm an idiot. Like I need to be focusing on my kids right now. And so like as a 42-year-old, like I'm having trouble, focusing on the things that are super important to me. I can't imagine, like a 15-year-old. And so.
Absolutely. And they feel like they're missing out, but we feel like we're missing out. I mean, that's the thing. Like I just remember in the middle of COVID, because I'm doing telehealth. So like I'm doing therapy. I'm sitting on a device like this doing therapy for 9 hours a day. And like 3 months into COVID, we went camping and we had no internet access. And I was like, oh, this is like a dream.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, I mean, that's the thing. It's that it all comes down to modeling. Like you gotta model like that family time, that time with your adults doing an activity is so important, because you're building that relationship and you're building that communication and you're talking. Like I love the rules of like no devices at the table, and the devices are turned off, and you're not. I mean, Social Dilemma talks about that all the time, because this is the thing that's so interesting. I mean, these devices are created to keep you absolutely addicted. I didn't know before watching that movie that there was a psychologist, like that you went to college to make people addicted to it. I've seen the repercussions of it, but I didn't know that there was like a degree in that. So, I mean, it's really important to disengage and model to your kids not being on the device.
Yeah. I've challenged myself last week, and I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to try to do it every single week, but basically just a Sunday 24-hour social media device detox. And I did it last weekend, and it was awesome. Like, I mean, I loved it. And it really wasn't that hard. I was just like, I'm going to put my phone away. Like, we went outside and we're like building stuff with my kids and doing woodworking, and it was awesome. And I need to do more of it to model that for sure.
So is one thing, Stu, just for you, you're 41, you're not 42. I'm a little bit embarrassed to have to remind you that you're 41 years old.
Oh yeah, my wife just turned. Yeah.
So, but do you see a marked difference when you do set up these significant boundaries, time boundaries, not necessarily content boundaries, but time boundaries, and the effort that really drives away from some of the tendencies, because you mentioned earlier, there's a tendency when you're reaching sexual maturity that this becomes a thing that's more prevalent and more appealing. But is there like a time factor as well? Like if you detox from these things and you kind of drive that into your family culture, are you seeing, is there even data that supports that the numbers significantly go down or up the other way? And because I'm trying to find proactive ways to, like, really, before my kids are hitting this stage. And my daughter, as you highlighted, she's 10, so not only could she go to jail, but she's hitting kind of that window. But I would love to be proactive in things that are not directly addressing it necessarily, because my boys don't get it, but it's driving those habits to drive down some of the stats.
I do want to stress, though, that it's also video games as well, getting them off their, it's not just social media, because the girls, statistics show it's more girls on social media and it's more boys on video games. Can I specifically pull up stats on, I just, from talking to parents, I hear, so I can't specifically pull up stats off the top of my head, but parents tell me that when their kids are sitting on these even video games for hours on end, they're not very nice when they get off. Like,
Yeah.
they're hard to interact with. And it's really like helping the kids and the parents so I think it's good to set like limits and boundaries around technology in general, which, like I said, can also be the video games. I've just seen parents say the kids seem less stressed when they're off the devices. I think we feel less stressed when we're off the devices. I mean, and there are definitely marked behavioral changes when they're not spending that much time in that world. That is, the problem is social media. People are living their, like, a lot of it is this jealousy that they have a life that you don't have. There's this comparison thing that people have with social media. Their life is better than mine. They have it better than I do, which can negatively impact their self-esteem. And there's also studies that there's been increased suicide rates and depression and anxiety in kids since this piece with technology. I've been recently doing a lot of research on empathy in boys, and they're talking about how this living in kind of this video game culture, it's hypersexualized, it's hyper masculine, and that's negatively impacting as well. So definitely scaling back and setting limits and boundaries around time and things like that is really important.
It's huge. Yeah, I mean, I know like teenage boys are on those chat video games where they got their headsets on, they're talking to people across the world, and they're.
I know a lot of adults that do that as
Well,
well.
I
yeah,
say
that's
in
fair.
my line of business, there's a ton of adults that
Yeah.
that's what they do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Boy, vey, man. Well, David, you got anything else?
No, and again, I just want to encourage you, Cheryl, and I'm just very grateful that you take the time. I know you probably spent today 9 hours today on a video and helping people, become healthy and achieve their whole selves. And just very thankful that you take the time to come on with a couple knuckleheads and talk through these things that are of utmost concern. And I think that, I mentioned it previously, but the work that you're doing is saving lives, and it's incredible. And it has
Thank
me,
you.
I mean, even this short time, I've taken a number of notes and ways that I want to implement things, and even again refreshing. It's been a while since I thought about the don't cry thing, so I did get a little therapy session out of this. But even these
You're
just these
welcome.
different ways. Thank you so much. I'll wait for the bill in the
Okay.
mail after. But just these little reminders and these conversations that we as adults should be able to have too, as parents, as dads and moms, just to be able to have discourse on how to be better for our children, I think is so important. And so you're making a huge impact, and I can't wait to see your website. Can't wait till it comes out. I will be on it, and I look forward to the resources and when you drop your books and looking for some
Thank you.
children's books. It's just to encourage you, because the message that you're spreading is huge, and the ripple effect will be significant. So thank you for what you do. It's awesome.
Thank you. I love what I do, so that helps.
Yeah, it's great. So if sextingsolutions.com is the website that
Yes.
we want to go check out. Is there any other best way that if people want to ask more questions, get a hold of you?
I do have a website up for seedsofchangetherapy.com as well. So that's my private therapy practice. So that can be a resource as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, Cheryl, thank you so much. Like David said, it's been great for us. It's been a great mentor session for us and therapy session for us. There's a lot for us dads to think about and be great parents is what we want to be. So again, thank you. It's great to have you on. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So everyone, go check out Cheryl. Take this stuff serious. This is a little bit different of a conversation than we normally have, but it's a really, really important one. And share this, tell people about it. And yeah, I think most importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Make it a great day, friends. Thank you so much for listening.
See you.
But